The galactic elites were a collection of species that had ruled the stars for centuries, effortlessly wielding the power of superior technology, vast knowledge, and devastating military strength. Their empire stretched across hundreds of worlds, each dominated by a race that had evolved far beyond human comprehension. Their fleets were vast, their weapons devastating, and their soldiers were engineered to perfection. To them, humans were nothing but a footnote in history, a young, rebellious species that had somehow managed to cling to life in a galaxy full of far more advanced beings. The elites saw themselves as the pinnacle of evolution. Their bodies, enhanced by genetic modifications, were massive, their minds sharp as knives, and their technology far outstripped anything humans could dream of. The greatest minds of the galaxy had long declared humanity to be nothing more than a passing curiosity, useful only in war to serve as cannon fodder. Every time the elites looked at humans, they saw only primitive, unworthy creatures, desperate to survive in a galaxy that had long moved on from the likes of them. This was how the galactic elites viewed the human military, a haphazard collection of soldiers barely able to coordinate, let alone rival the precision of elite tactics. Human soldiers, with their crude weapons and outdated equipment, were barely more than expendable pawns. The idea of them being anything more than fodder for war was laughable. The elites believed that humans, despite their occasional victories, could never truly master the complexities of galactic warfare. In fact, the elites believed that their battle strategy and understanding of warfare were so far superior that no human force, no matter how hard they tried, could ever hope to match them. When word reached the elites about a war taking place on a remote, war-torn planet, they were uninterested at first. It was just another conflict, one among many in a universe filled with them. But then they learned that the human forces were involved, and that piqued their curiosity. The elites had seen this before. Humans would start strong and then falter, eventually retreating in defeat. This was the moment the elites had been waiting for. They decided to visit the battlefield, to see firsthand how the human soldiers fought, and, predictably, to watch them fail. Led by Commander Zalcor, a hulking alien who towered over most of his peers, the elites landed on the planet with a sense of superiority. Zalcor, a veteran of countless campaigns, had long dismissed human forces as nothing more than a nuisance. He had seen them on other planets, seen them engage in their crude tactics and their desperate, disorganized efforts. But Zalcor believed this visit would be different. He intended to watch their failure up close and remind the humans of their place in the galaxy. As he and his crew took their positions on the observation deck of their command ship, the tension in the air was palpable. The elites stood tall, arms crossed, their eyes narrowed in contempt as they watched the human forces on the ground below. The battle on the surface was chaotic, as it always was with human soldiers. There were explosions, disorganized gunfire, and a general sense of panic. But amid the madness, the humans fought with a kind of desperate determination that was not lost on Zalcor. He sneered at their primitive tactics, their lack of coordination, and their dependence on numbers. The elites, of course, fought with precision and superior strategy. Their soldiers were more than soldiers, they were living machines. The very idea that humans could stand up to them in any meaningful way was laughable. But Zalcor didn't just want to observe the humans' failure. He wanted to humiliate them, to make them feel the crushing weight of the elite's superiority. He turned to his officers, his voice thick with scorn. "They think they can win? Let them. But not without first showing them how futile their efforts are," he said with a cruel chuckle. Among the human forces, there was one soldier who caught the commander's eye, Sergeant Alex Apex McCoy. He was a Marine sniper, known for his quiet efficiency, and he was perched far away from the front lines, picking off alien targets with deadly precision. McCoy had been part of elite Marine sniper teams for years. His reputation preceded him, his calm demeanor in the face of battle, his deadly accuracy, and his relentless focus had earned him the respect of his peers. Yet, to Zalcor, McCoy was just another insignificant human, playing at a game far beyond his abilities. Zalcor's eyes narrowed as he watched McCoy. The sniper's calmness, the way he methodically set up his shots, seemed almost primitive. How could such a weak species be capable of such deadly accuracy? Zalcor, whose species had perfected every form of warfare, knew the power of precision. But to him, it was clear, the human sniper could never match the prowess of a true elite warrior. With a deep, mocking laugh, Zalcor issued a challenge to McCoy, loud enough for the humans to hear over their comms. "I'll make it simple, human. Take that shot you're so proud of. But make it impossible, a target out of your reach. If you fail, we'll strip you and your soldiers of your weapons, and you'll be forced to leave the field in disgrace." The humans around McCoy fell silent. They all knew what the elite commander had just proposed, and most were unsure how McCoy would respond. The tension was thick, but McCoy simply adjusted his scope, never taking his eyes off the target. His focus never wavered. It was as if the threat hadn't even reached him. Zalcor, sensing that McCoy hadn't yet processed the full weight of his challenge, smiled cruelly. "You will fail, human. You will fail because you are weak. Your species is weak." His words were meant to provoke, but McCoy did not respond. His hands moved methodically, adjusting the focus, the wind gauge, and the bullet trajectory in his mind. He was calm, unflinching, traits that made him one of the deadliest snipers in the human military. "Just take the shot," Zalcor spat, irritated by the human's silence. "Or leave this field and save yourself the humiliation." The challenge had been set. But McCoy wasn't there for show. He wasn't there for honor. He was there to do what he always did, complete the mission. Zalcor stood tall, watching with disdain as McCoy lined up his rifle. He could already feel the victory in his bones. A human sniper, trying to prove something against the elites? The very idea was absurd. Sergeant Alex, Apex, McCoy sat silently in the belly of the human command post, watching the display screens flicker with updates on the battlefield. The war on this godforsaken planet had been dragging on for months, and today was no different. The humans were outnumbered, under-equipped, and constantly fighting an uphill battle against the superior technology and firepower of the alien forces. But McCoy, a seasoned Marine sniper, knew something the elites would never understand: the power of the human will. He'd been in countless battles, seen friends fall, and fought through the worst conditions imaginable. But no matter how dire the situation seemed, McCoy knew how to win. That wasn't arrogance, that was experience. His skill with a rifle was unmatched, and his ability to adapt in combat made him the kind of soldier that could turn the tide of a battle with a single shot. But today, there was something different in the air. The presence of the Galactic elites loomed over the battlefield, and McCoy could feel their eyes on him from a distance. It wasn't long before the challenge came. The elite commander, Zalcor, had seen enough of the human soldiers scrambling in the dirt. He watched as McCoy positioned himself atop a cliff, aiming his long-range sniper rifle at a well-defended alien outpost. To Zalcor, this was nothing more than a futile exercise. Humans, with their outdated weapons and primitive tactics, stood no chance against his advanced alien forces. The idea of a human sniper taking out a target was laughable. To the elites, it was all part of their twisted entertainment. Zalcor's voice crackled over the comms, condescending and laced with mockery. "Human sniper," he called out, his tone dripping with disdain. "Prove to us that your species is not entirely useless. Take down that target." He gestured at the fortified alien outpost. "From the distance you claim to master. If you succeed, perhaps we'll reconsider our opinion of your kind." McCoy didn't flinch. He'd heard the mockery before. It was part of the job, really. Soldiers didn't need the approval of their superiors, let alone aliens who thought they knew everything. The elites had underestimated humans for years, thinking that their strength lay only in firepower and technology. What the elites failed to understand was that humans had a way of thinking outside the box, of adapting, improvising, and overcoming. McCoy's hand gripped the stock of his rifle, feeling the weight of the weapon, a comforting presence in the chaos of war. He'd been in situations like this before, where the odds seemed insurmountable. But the key was always in the details. He analyzed the wind, the distance, the terrain, everything that could make this shot possible. The outpost, nestled between two rocky cliffs, was heavily guarded by a dozen alien soldiers, but their positions weren't perfect. McCoy adjusted his scope, focusing on the target, a high-ranking officer inside the command center. He could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. The entire human force depended on the outcome of this challenge. Failure meant more than just a missed shot. It meant losing respect, losing morale, and losing everything they had fought for. But McCoy wasn't just any soldier. He wasn't going to let arrogance be the reason humanity faltered. As he settled into his shooting position, the taunts from the elites continued. "This will be over before you even pull the trigger, human," one of the elite officers sneered. "You may as well surrender now, before we make you beg for your life." The insults flew, but McCoy's focus never wavered. The elites didn't know it, but this was his element. This was where he excelled. Sniping wasn't just about firing a weapon, it was about patience, about understanding the environment, about using everything at your disposal to outsmart the enemy. McCoy had been trained in some of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. He had taken shots from miles away, under the harshest conditions, and never missed. This challenge was just another test, but for him, it was also an opportunity to prove a point, that no matter how much the elites mocked, no matter how superior their technology, humans could not be underestimated. The seconds stretched out like hours as he took his final calculations. His heart rate slowed, his breath evened out. Time seemed to freeze as McCoy squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, a sharp crack that shattered the tense silence. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind, the crackling of the comms, and the stunned silence of the elites. The target, the alien officer, crumpled to the ground with a clean, precise hit. The bullet had found its mark, traveling through the air with deadly accuracy. McCoy didn't need to watch the impact, he already knew it was perfect. His calm demeanor in the face of ridicule had turned into a victory, not just for him, but for every human soldier who had ever been dismissed by those who thought themselves superior. The elites stood silent for a moment, their earlier mockery replaced with disbelief. Zalcor, who had been so sure of the human's failure, now found himself at a loss for words. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched in frustration. The Marine sniper had done what none of them thought was possible. The other elites, who had once laughed at the prospect of a human sniper being capable of such a feat, now exchanged uneasy glances. The outcome of this challenge wasn't just about a single shot, it was about the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to defy the odds even when everything seemed stacked against them. The Galactic elites had dismissed humanity for so long, but McCoy had just given them a lesson they would never forget. And still, McCoy didn't celebrate. He simply took another shot to steady his rifle and prepared for the next task. The battle was far from over, and the war had just begun. The elites were learning the hard way that underestimating humanity was a mistake they would not soon make again. The tension in the air was thick as McCoy adjusted his scope, carefully examining the alien outpost through the crosshairs. His mind was as sharp as his rifle, calculating every factor that could influence the shot. The elites, standing behind their commander, were oblivious to the precision and calculation that was about to unfold. To them, it was just another human soldier attempting the impossible, another futile gesture to entertain their arrogance. They had no idea that McCoy had already factored in everything they were too proud to even notice. The wind, light but constant, was pushing from the east. McCoy compensated for it in an instant, shifting the aim of his rifle ever so slightly. The target was a high-ranking alien officer, standing at the command center of the outpost, visible only through the narrow opening of a metal tower. The position was nearly impossible to hit from this range, but McCoy had trained for situations like this, long-distance shots through narrow gaps, with minimal time to adjust. His heartbeat steadied, the calmness of his focus drowning out the mocking voices of the elites. The moment felt suspended in time, every detail coming together. The target shifted slightly, and McCoy knew this was the moment. He took a breath, held it, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report cracked through the air, a sound so sharp and clean that it felt like the world had been paused. The shot flew, cutting through the wind and distance with precision. It was as if everything around McCoy ceased to exist: the battlefield, the mocking elites, the tension in the air. All that mattered was the target. The elites were silent for a brief moment, their collective gaze fixed on the point where the shot was supposed to land. Then, in an instant, the alien officer collapsed. The precise impact was undeniable, and the body crumpled to the ground in a heap, signaling the perfect hit. There was no moment of disbelief for McCoy. He had known the shot would land. But what happened next was something that no one, least of all the elites, had expected. As the officer fell, the sniper's bullet had pierced a critical weak point in the alien armor, a flaw that the elites had never noticed, despite their advanced technology. The armor, designed to be impervious to conventional weapons, suddenly buckled under the force of the shot, exposing a vulnerable gap in its defense. The cascading effects of the sniper's shot rippled across the battlefield. A chain reaction of explosions erupted from the alien outpost. The vulnerability in the armor triggered a series of failures in the defensive systems, and within moments, the entire outpost began to collapse. McCoy's perfect shot had done far more than eliminate a high-ranking officer. It had exposed the weakness in the aliens' otherwise impenetrable technology. The elites, still standing at their observation posts, could do nothing but watch in stunned silence as their superior position crumbled. Commander Zalkor's face, once filled with smug confidence, twisted into one of disbelief. He had underestimated the human sniper, assuming that their simple tactics and crude weapons could never match the superiority of their own advanced technology. But here, in this moment, his arrogance shattered. The humans were not as primitive as he had thought. The rest of the elites, watching the devastation unfold, exchanged nervous glances. They had believed that their military prowess would crush the humans, but now they were seeing something entirely different. The humans were resourceful, unpredictable, and capable of exploiting even the slightest weakness with lethal precision. McCoy's shot had turned the tide of battle, and the elites had no idea how to respond to this unforeseen turn of events. Zalkor growled, his mind scrambling for a logical explanation. He had seen countless battles, fought in wars across the galaxy, and never had he encountered such a humbling defeat. The outpost was now in ruins, its defensive systems in disarray, its soldiers scrambling to recover from the chaos. The human sniper's bullet had done more than kill an officer, it had taken down a symbol of elite superiority. In that moment, McCoy had shown them the truth: humans were not to be underestimated. As the dust settled on the battlefield, Zalkor's expression changed. There was no anger, no rage, only a grudging recognition of the skill and determination of the human soldier. He had lost this round, but the deeper realization was beginning to sink in: humans, with their limited resources, had just exposed the cracks in the elite's impenetrable facade. And it was a crack they hadn't even known existed. McCoy, meanwhile, remained calm. He had completed the task, but he wasn't celebrating. He knew better. There were still battles to be fought, still enemies to be faced. He watched the elites begin to scramble in their confusion, their advanced technology failing them in the face of a simple human sniper's ingenuity. For McCoy, the victory wasn't about proving himself to the elites. It was about proving that humans could adapt, could think beyond the limitations others imposed on them. It was a quiet victory, but one that would echo across the galaxy. And as the elites began to retreat, they could no longer ignore the fact that their confidence in their superiority had been shattered by a single shot from a human soldier. The message was clear: humans were no longer to be seen as mere fodder. The elites had just learned a lesson they would never forget. The chaos that erupted from McCoy's shot was something the elites had never anticipated. Commander Zalkor, standing at the head of the observation post, watched in stunned disbelief as the alien outpost began to implode. The ground shook as the explosions rippled through the complex, and the once immense structure crumbled like a house of cards. His eyes widened, his jaw tightening with frustration. This was not supposed to happen. Humans weren't supposed to be capable of this kind of precision or insight. Around him, the rest of the elites stood in silence, their smug expressions now replaced with something more akin to shock. Zalkor had made a grave miscalculation. His mind, once sure of the superiority of his species, began to unravel in real time. He had expected the human sniper to fail, to miss, to confirm his preconceptions that humans were nothing more than inefficient, desperate beings grasping at straws in the vast, unforgiving galaxy. But instead, McCoy had done what no one had thought possible. He had outwitted them. The collapse of the outpost wasn't just a tactical blow, it was a blow to the very notion of elite supremacy. The entire chain of command had been shattered. Their defensive systems, built to withstand even the most devastating assaults, had been compromised by a single shot. It wasn't just that McCoy had killed the officer, it was that he had exposed the weakness of their most advanced technology, something that had eluded the elites for centuries. For the first time, the galactic elites were confronted with the harsh truth: humans were not the feeble creatures they had believed them to be. As the dust settled and the remnants of the outpost smoldered, Zalcor stood motionless, his mind racing to process what had just transpired. His entire worldview was crumbling before his eyes. He had underestimated the resourcefulness and ingenuity of humans. The idea that a single human soldier, one without the luxury of advanced tech, genetic modifications, or centuries of warfare experience, could not only match but outperform the most advanced species in the galaxy was inconceivable. Yet here he stood, a commander whose forces had been humiliated by a single sniper shot. It was a wound to his pride that no amount of victory could ever heal. Around him, his subordinates were beginning to murmur. Their earlier dismissiveness had evaporated. They exchanged glances, the realization dawning on them that something had changed. Humans were no longer just cannon fodder to be swept aside. They were a force to be reckoned with. The mocking smiles had vanished, replaced by looks of wariness and even respect. But Zalcor wasn't ready to concede. His pride, though shaken, still held on to the remnants of his belief in his superiority. He barked orders to his remaining forces, attempting to salvage what he could from the disaster unfolding below. But the damage was done. It wasn't just the loss of a strategic position, it was the realization that the elites, for all their might, had overlooked something essential. The human spirit was not to be underestimated. McCoy, standing miles away, hadn't waited for a confirmation or recognition. He didn't need the applause of the elites. His role was to do what was necessary, no matter the odds. He wasn't there to prove a point, he was there to win. The battlefield, with all its chaos and danger, was the place where he had found his purpose. For him, it was a simple equation: target, focus, eliminate. The elites were just another challenge, just another group that believed they were invincible, and McCoy had just shown them the fallacy of their belief. The galactic elites, standing in the wreckage of their own arrogance, began to retreat. Slowly at first, then in full force. The realization of their vulnerability spread like wildfire. Zalcor, his face red with fury, ordered his forces to withdraw from the planet. It was a humiliating defeat, and he knew it would be remembered as one of the greatest miscalculations in galactic history. The story of the human sniper who had humbled the elites spread quickly across the galaxy. It was a tale of unexpected victory, a story that would become legend, told and retold across human space. McCoy, however, remained a silent figure, content in his victory but uninterested in the accolades. He didn't need them. For him, the mission had been simple: prove that humans were more than just fodder, and in doing so, prove that the elites had made the mistake of underestimating humanity. As the last of the elite ships vanished into the stars, the humans on the battlefield stood tall. They had faced the impossible and triumphed. The galactic elites, once invincible in their own eyes, had been shown that humanity, despite its flaws, was not to be written off. They were a force that could think, adapt, and survive against all odds. McCoy, looking out over the battlefield, knew that this moment was more than just a victory. It was the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, a chapter where they were no longer seen as inferior, but as equals in the vast expanse of the galaxy.